this is a shambolic effort by this government, and whoever is to blame, it just sort of speaks to a wider kind of view that nothing really is working, that Downing Street has not got a grip on how to run a country, let alone how to govern the Labour Party or how to deal with a Prime Minister who is lacking the sort of personal skills and political nous to do all this himself.
Hello and welcome to Coffee House Shots. I'm James Heale and I'm joined today by Tim Shipman and Isabel Hardman. Now, before we come on to PMQs, Tim, what on earth has been happening in the Labour Party? You've had all these briefings overnight. Tell us, set the scene for us.
Yeah, it appears on the face of it like a coordinated attempt to decapitate the Health Secretary and machine gun anyone who might have designs on Keir Starmer's job. I think some of this is conspiracy and I think some of it is cock-up. Patrick Maguire of The Times, well-established journalist, says he spoke to 4 people on Monday who all suggested that were there to be any attempt to get rid of Starmer, he would fight. And he would fight mercilessly to the end to stop that. I know who 2 of those people are because I've spoken to them myself, and both of them insist that they were responding to questions that they were asked. I don't think so. Some of this, may or may not have been at Number 10's instigation. That's the first thing to say. Second thing to say is that absolutely everybody has been briefing when asked that Starmer will fight on. And that was clearly a message they wanted to get out there. It was clearly something that they had discussed with the Prime Minister, and it was clearly something that the Prime Minister would have been aware of. These people were saying, look, he knows he's in a fight, and more importantly, there is an argument we need to make, which is that any change now would be damaging in terms of the economy. The markets wouldn't trust whoever comes next. And we know that's their line because that's what they've been saying in private, not just to journalists, but to MPs as well. There have been briefings in the last 48 hours to MPs saying precisely that and saying that that the bond markets will not take kindly to a bunch of turbulence at the top of politics. What then happened on Tuesday is that somebody went further, to The Guardian in particular, and made it much more personal about Wes Streeting. Now, I don't know exactly who that person was. Lots of people are speculating as to who it was. I'm certainly not going to confirm who I've been speaking to, but the perception is amongst MPs and ministers that Morgan McSweeney, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, is involved. And whether or not he was the person who gave that quote to The Guardian, I don't know. But if people think he was, that's a big problem for the Prime Minister and it's a big problem for Morgan McSweeney. So you now have whipped up out of thin air, let's be absolutely clear about this. The night before Wes Streeting was due to go on the broadcast round and outline further health reforms and trumpet the fact that they've created a whole load of new appointments and got waiting lists down. This machine gunning of Streeting, and also just hours, obviously, before Prime Minister's questions, which provided an open goal for Kemi Badenoch, into which even she did not fail to slot the ball a couple of times. So this is a shambolic effort by this government. And whoever is to blame, it just sort of speaks to a wider kind of view that nothing really is working, that Downing Street has not got a grip on how to run a country, let alone how to govern the Labour Party or how to deal with a Prime Minister who is lacking the sort of personal skills and political nous to do all this himself. And I think this is part of the problem. Other leaders would have hauled people in, banged their heads together, promised them things or threatened them with things. The whips would have done the same. And instead, because none of that infrastructure seems to be functioning, I think we've got into a situation where people feel they have to do this stuff on Starmer's behalf. And with the exception of Amy Richards, who is beginning to get him in front of the new political secretary, getting him in front of MPs, Starmer has been deeply passive Prime Minister. He barely ever goes to the tea room. We're told that started to increase. MPs are sort of sending messages aghast that, he's been having lunch here again, as if he was a sort of visitor from abroad, which of course he is, because he seems to spend as much time abroad as he does in Number 10. So that's the sort of context of this. And frankly, it's all pretty damaging.
Talking there, Tim suggested it's sort of cock up as well as conspiracy as well. How much can the Prime Minister, who was suggesting today that nothing was to do with him, how much responsibility does he have for the current mess that Number 10 and relations with the PLP are in?
Yeah, quite a lot of responsibility because he's the chief. He sets the tone. He also, as Tim says, he's the one who I think sets the tone and the impression that he finds the PLP intensely boring and he finds the business of politics intensely boring. And there are obviously people in Number 10 who already felt that. But I think that when you have a Prime Minister who does find it hard to take seriously the grumbles of backbenchers, and Starmer is by no means alone in this, and Labour is by no means the only party that's had these problems. Many prime ministers, once they've spent a fair bit of time in Number 10 and they've been to meetings with world leaders, they start to feel that their backbenchers are very parochial and very petty. And that may be true. Their backbenchers may be very parochial and very petty, but to give that impression is disastrous. You need to keep that thought very, very secret and continue to flatter those backbenchers and make them feel important because they have to vote for you. They have to continue supporting you. And where we've ended up with now is with these feral, as they're being described, Labour backbenchers who are openly plotting, who are openly complaining about the Prime Minister. Now, I would say one thing, which I think Labour does deserve Keir Starmer. He's the leader that Labour deserves, in the sense that he doesn't really know what he wants to do. He just knows that he wants to be better than the Tories and that he has a personal sense of moral high ground above the Tories. He knows that the country doesn't have the same instincts as him. And so he is prepared to follow where voters in focus groups are telling him to go, but he doesn't really believe in it. And I would say that that's probably where quite a lot of Labour backbenchers are, in that they've had a bruising, decade, where they have had to come to terms with the fact that their instincts on politics are not the same as voters. And they haven't fully worked out how to confront that, I think, and whether there are certain things that they sort of hold very dear that they're prepared to discard. I'm thinking particularly of policies on immigration, but also actually on lots of other issues as well, including the economy, including jobs, including workers' rights, and so on. It's very hard for a Labourite today to work out what they should stand for, holding in tension what they personally believe in and what the electorate believes in. And Keir Starmer is the physical embodiment of that agony. I
think we're now at the point, though, aren't we, where there's not actually that much of an argument about what Labour should believe in, but what the Labour backbenchers no longer believe in is Keir Starmer. A bit like Boris Johnson, a bit like some of the other leaders we've seen over the last few years. It's his leadership and his success has been a very transactional arrangement with the Labour Party, which is, trust me, I'm a winner, and you need to back me because nobody else is a winner. And they're looking around and thinking, this bloke's not a winner at all. He's absolutely hopeless at this. He hasn't achieved anything like what he even thinks he's achieved, let alone what he promised to achieve. The economy is in a kind of doom loop. And if things are going to pop, a lot of Labour MPs are saying, well, we want what we came into politics for, and that's to spend more and tax more and do all that. So, but what they've decided is, in Quentin Lett's old words, that Starmer is a bit of a clunker, and that really is any amount of repositioning or a new budget or anything like that actually going to make any difference to that. So they're not having some grand ideological debate about the direction of travel. Maybe if there's a contest, in due course that will come. But at the moment, it feels like they've just decided that the leader's a dud, and frankly, it might be better to get rid of him. And he has learnt this lesson very slowly about the importance of Parliament and the importance of your own MPs. It's a parliamentary system. You rely on those MPs. That's where your authority comes from, quite literally, in the Constitution. But more importantly, I remember a conversation that one of Boris Johnson's aides had with him early on when he was worrying about this, that, or the other, and the voters and all the rest of it. They said, the voters can only get rid of you every 5 years. Your own party can get rid of you whenever they feel like it. So you've got to make an effort to stroke them and take them seriously and listen to them. And there's a lot of quite senior sort of what I would call, aging power brokers on the Labour backbenches, people who've been around a lot, who've actually seen a lot, who can remember, perhaps, of course they can remember the Blair Brown government. Some of them can even remember the last knock-ins of the 1970s government. These are people who have a degree of wisdom and insight, and Starmer has no interest in talking to them. I mean, I was told the other day that someone tried to line him up to talk to one of these guys, who is the sort of person I listen to now and again, and quite often phones me up with interesting insights, the sort of thing that a Prime Minister might go, oh, that's useful. But he wasn't interested in that. He's hanging out with, Trump and Macron and all the rest of them. And it's very unsexy for a sitting Prime Minister to have to pander to his party. But we are now in a position where Starmer's only sort of purpose, as far as the broader voters of the nation were concerned, was that he might be able to strike, bring in that sort of Labour kind of let's help everybody, let's help the poor, but with a bit of common sense in a way that it doesn't sort of drift off into Corbyn world. And we're about to have a budget that is going to put up tax by however much. So as far as the voters are concerned, they've already lost trust in him. But looking at the public's reaction, the Labour Party's lost trust in him too.
Yeah, and I think, Isabel, one sign of that potentially was at PMQs today, where it did seem at times the Labour benches were a bit muted. And obviously Kemi Badenoch inevitably led on all those briefings and contrasting Keir Starmer's job security with those of the nation's business people in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, I thought Kemi Badenoch did a good job, but she wasn't the winner from PMQs. It was Wes Streeting, and he wasn't even in the room because Keir Starmer had to, in effect, apologise to his health secretary. He didn't do in that sort of indirect language, but he did endorse the health secretary, say that he was doing a great job, that he would never sanction briefings against members of his cabinet, and most laughably, and many people did laugh, that they are a united team, which is one of those statements that you never make when you're actually united, because people can see it and they don't need to be told it. But yeah, Badenoch, started out with the sort of the knockabout, and then moved it to her argument that the Labour government doesn't know what it's doing with the economy and with the country, and talked about, as you say, this tax doom loop, where there aren't as many jobs, therefore there isn't as much tax coming in, and therefore tax needs to go up even more. And I thought she did a good job. And Starmer was having to try to switch the conversation to, issues of what the government was doing and what it was, in his view, achieving, away from who hates who in Downing Street. But when he did that, Kemi then came at him with the unemployment figures. So it wasn't as though he could say, we're focused on the country, because as soon as she focused on the country, he had a lot more defending to do, which shows his predicament. It's not as though things are going really well and Labour MPs are just a bit bored. It's actually that there is an inner government turmoil and a wider economic turmoil as well.
And how astonishing that Badenoch felt able to make those jokes about unemployment
Yes.
and job security. I mean, look how far we've come in 6 weeks. I mean, no one would say that the Tories are out of the woods or have made any meaningful comeback yet. But, the fact that the leader of the opposition, who was herself the butt of Starmer's jokes about job security 5 or 6 weeks ago, is now able to mock him in the same way. And he didn't feel he was able to come back in the same vein, which might have been one of his retorts, and he wasn't able to. It was a pretty amazing session. And how astonishing, too, that he had to apologise to Streeting sort of at one remove in the chamber, because as Streeting revealed on his morning round of broadcasts, Starmer hadn't bothered to call him. And this is absolute classic Starmer, If I'd picked up, turned on the radio or picked up the papers this morning and looked at all of that, I think I might have picked up the phone to my health secretary and said, just so you know, none of this has come from me, and if I find out who's done it, they're out of a job. But instead of doing that, he appears to have just sort of hunkered down and eaten his pescatarian plate of breakfast and, his desultory baked beans on toast or whatever it is that he began the morning with today. And once again seems to lack any of the kind of human skills that you need to be a successful Prime Minister. And as someone who's written, I will bang this drum as long as I can. Why don't these people read my books and work out what works? We've had now 3 of the last 5 Prime Ministers have been people who didn't think the act of politics or communication was remotely important to what they do. Theresa May, Rishi Sunak, and now Keir Starmer. And the other 2, Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, had issues of their own, as we all know. But, it's not rocket science, this. And to do this when arguably the best communicator on either front bench, was about to do a morning round, is so completely ridiculous. And Streeting dealt with it all with good humour, with a bit of self-deprecation, but with some fire in his belly as well. And I think people looked at that and thought, hang on a minute, this is quite good. And I was obviously on the phone this morning. I had to completely rewrite my column for the magazine as a result of all these events. And someone said to me this morning that there was a straw poll done by a very well plugged in MP of Streeting's levels of support earlier this week, and it fell short of the 80 MPs that would be required to go and challenge Starmer in due course. But on Wednesday morning, this morning, that number was surging because people listened to him and thought, well, hang on a minute. He's not actually saying we should take a dramatically different course. He's pivoted a bit to the left. And this is a much more affable and sort of human face for the party. So this whole thing, calculated or not, has backfired in a quite spectacular fashion.
And we're recording this at 2:00, and after that PMQ session, there was one of the most packed out lobby briefings of recent times. Typically, these are not great events in kind of post-Brexit times.
But you went rushing over there.
I went rushing over there, and I thought the body
Tell us
language.
about it.
Well, it was striking as to who had a good day. You had the two Tory spinners rock up almost sort of Wild West style with a swagger in their step.
Yep.
Kemi Badenoch's top comms aide slamming down his who wants some, is that it? And basically had 2-3 questions because there was nothing for the Tories to say, and it was very much a 25-minute or thereabouts long briefing, which we were repeatedly told by the PM's press spokesman that it was just going to be, I refer you to the comments the Prime Minister gave previously, I refer you to the comments the Prime Minister, I refer you to the Prime Minister's words. And one might say that the Prime Minister's words are themselves the problem, that inarticulacy at the heart of this government. And so really they were sort of trying to dead back everything. But there is a vacuum there. And we've talked about it on this podcast, both in terms of the leadership, the lack of engagement. I understand today that after PMQs, the Prime Minister is now having lunch, which is in members' dining room.
Well, fancy that.
One can only imagine what they're discussing right now, what's on the menu. But I mean, again, it's just this sense of being not control of events and actually unable to answer just some basic questions about who speaks for this government. It's the classic old question of Leo Amery, speak for England, Arthur, and no one currently is speaking particularly well. And those who are getting cut off at the knees by some within their own side.
I mean, do you agree as well, Isabel? I think there was an element during PMQs where he was far too reliant again on his notes, and people who were in the recent PLP meeting said he was sort of completely hidebound by his script and unable to sort of just talk normally and level with people. And it felt like some of the trickier kind of stuff in the chamber again during PMQs, he was again just sort of flicking through his the folder in front of him, and it feels like he doesn't seem to have kind of sort of easily kind of projectable views on a lot of issues. There was something to do with legal matters, and he was immediately knew exactly what he wanted to say. But
the death penalty, that he was really animated,
issue,
which clearly
very
politics,
animated, very fluent answer, knew his own mind, this it's simply not the case on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was interesting because he was able to say we are united and focused, but what they're united around or what they're focused on will still have been a mystery to Labour backbenchers walking out, other than renewal, which, he doesn't really know what that means yet. And it's been a while. And he's able to sort of point to a few things that are getting better, but they're all kind of process things as opposed to overarching reform. So, rather than 2 million extra appointments, it's 5 million extra appointments in the NHS. It's not, we're actually rebuilding the NHS so that it's able to treat people in a way that responds to the fact that most people have, complex long-term conditions or something like that. Probably not going into that level of detail at PMQs, but you know what I mean, as in that he still doesn't really know what he actually wants to do with Britain. And that's a real issue. But just to sort of look at who benefited from the session, aside from Wes Streeting, who's had a great few days, and his line about him also kidnapping Shergar and, not believing the moon landings were fake was sort of classic Wes Streeting in terms of being able to turn a situation to his benefit in the media. I don't think that Kemi Badenoch benefited from this session either, because even though she was able, as Tim says, to make these jokes about turmoil in number 10, about job security and so on, I think that those who are watching this spectacle will not think, oh, the Tories are now back in form. They'll just think, well, both of these parties are having a nervous breakdown, and no one seems to know how to run this country. Everything's, going to hell in a handcart. I'm going to vote reform. Because neither party really feels as though it has a moral high ground. They can poke fun at one another, but it's a very self-loathing form of poking fun, because it's sort of, it kind of takes one to know one. The Tories know exactly what this feels like. They have very recent experience. And, Labour are borrowing the Tories' attack lines from 2010 when they came into government about black holes. For voters, they are listening to this thinking, none of you have a clue. I'm fed up with you all.
Totally agree.
Well, there we go. Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you, Isabel. And thank you for listening to Coffee House Shots.